especially those people who are new to the committee. So welcome to hopefully an exciting year of scrutiny. So let's deal with the mundane stuff first. Apologies. We've got apologies from Councillor Matthew Thornton McAllister and Councillor Keith Driver, and we have both Councillor Sands as subs. So welcome to you. Any declarations of interest from members on items being discussed today? No declarations of interest. Okay, well, the next item we'll deal with is item 3, which is the appointment of a vice chair. Could I have a nomination for the appointment of vice chair? Councillor Hunt.
Thank you, Chair. Could I nominate Councillor Bridget Colton?
Councillor Bridget Colton. Could I have a seconder for that, please? I think Councillor Vaughan Thomas was there with the seconding. Any other nominations for the post of vice chair? Well, as that is an uncontended post, then Councillor Bridget Colton is vice chair. Thank you. So, item 4, minutes of the Scrutiny Committee, 31st of March 2022. So, for those people who are here at the meeting of the 31st of March 2022, are you happy that those minutes represent an accurate record of the meeting? Please, general sort of nods of indication there. So, yeah, those minutes are agreed. Thank you. Item 5 is the report from the Norfolk Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee that was held on the 12th of May. Councillor Giles went to that and had hoped, I think, to come and present that report today to us, even though he's no longer on scrutiny, but is unable to. That report has now been circulated to you. Councillor Giles is more than happy to take any questions by email if members have any in relation to that report. So I'd like to thank him for his work on that. So, thank you. Right, item 6 is the appointment of the member and substitute member of the Norfolk Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So let's actually maybe I'll just say maybe we should outline what NHOSC is for people who are new to the committee. Councillor Stutley, I don't know whether you could just briefly give a brief synopsis of what NHOSC does for members who are new to the committee. I think that'd be quite useful.
Thank you, Chair. You put me on the spot.
Oh, sorry.
That's fine. It's a county full function on which we have one seat, and it's a collection of councillors that form the committee and a number of clinicians and other medical professionals that come together to discuss and scrutinise a number of items relating to health in the Norfolk and Waveney area.
And that might include things like access to dentistry and GPs and all of those.
We had exactly those items in the last one that I attended in March, I think, yes. So topics of the day.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think that's just quite useful for members who are new to that. So, right, let's look at getting some nominations for our representative on that committee then. Do I have any nominations, please? Councillor Stutley.
Yeah, I'd like to nominate Councillor Bridget Colton, please.
Okay. We've got Councillor Mike Sands has seconded that, so it's Councillor Bridget Colton. Do I have any other nominations for our representative on that committee? Okay, no other nominations, so Councillor Bridget Colton is our rep uncontested on that. Thank you. So now we need to seek a substitute for the occasions when Councillor Bridget Colton is unable to attend. So, can I have any nominations for substitute? Councillor Bridget Colton.
Yeah, Councillor Stutley.
Councillor Stutley. Is there a second for Councillor Stutley? I think Councillor Huntley may have been there first with the seconding, so it's Councillor Stutley. Any more nominations for sub? Councillor Galvin. Thank you, Councillor Osborne. Seconder for Councillor Galvin. Young, thank you. Okay, so we've got any more nominations for substitutes? Okay, we've got the contested position there, so we'll put that to the vote then. All those in favour of Councillor Brochett Colton, please indicate. Stootley, sorry. It's because I've written you down as a, yeah. Anyway, all those in favour of Councillor Stootley, please indicate. Okay, thank you. All those in favour of Councillor Galvin, please indicate.
2, 3.
Councillor Stootley is carried as the substitute. Thank you. So the next item we move on to is item 7, which is the appointment of a member and a substitute member of the Norfolk County-wide Community Safety Partnership Subpanel, which, when it gets to its acronym, is quite a mouthful. I have to admit, I've now completely forgotten who our representative was last year. Councillor Stootley.
It was Councillor Giles, and I was sub, because Councillor Giles had a very good record of attendance. I wasn't able to sub, so I can't really indicate this one at this stage.
It was a committee that, for my first few years of being chair of this committee, it didn't ever meet, and it seems to have started meeting more regularly in recent years. But to a certain extent, it does what it says on the tin. It's about community safety, and it's another function of the county council. So let's move on to nominations for a representative, please. Councillor Huntley.
Thank you, Chair. Could I please nominate Councillor Vivian Thomas?
Vivian Thomas. I have a seconder. Councillor Susan seconding that. Thank you. Any other nominations for the representative for the Community Safety Sub-Panel? No, in which case Councillor Vivian Thomas is appointed uncontested. Thank you. So now we move on to substitutes for the NCC SP. Councillor Huntley.
Thank you, Chair. Could I nominate Councillor Stootley for that, please?
Councillor Stootley. Any other, or seconder for that, please? Councillor Vaughan Thomas seconding there. Any other nominations for substitutes? Okay, thank you. In which case, Councillor Stootley is carried as the substitute for NCC SP. Thank you. Right. On item 8 now, pages 13 to 18, and what we have here are the terms of reference for scrutiny select committees. Again, for those members who are new to the committee, although most of the work of this committee is done here on a Thursday afternoon, once a month or so, we do have select committees, or task and finish groups as they're also known, which can go off and get involved in a particular item, I think, in more detail outside of the normal function of a 2-hour meeting. And what we have here in item 8 is some terms of reference for some proposed terms of reference for what those select committees should look like. So I'm interested to take any comments on those, or whether any officers want to sort of give a brief sort of outline on that. Councillor Galvin. Not Galvin, it's Carlo.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. Because I've got a few points to suggest. I chaired the Airbnb's task and finish group, and it fell during the COVID, which wasn't very helpful. But to start with, it's helpful to have clarity on the part of the scrutiny committee that the subject's appropriate for task and finish, and whether it's the best mechanism. The reason I say that, the Airbnb one, for example, Kate was a subject of the scrutiny committee, but for some reason, later on, the scrutiny committee wanted it to be the subject of the task and finish group. And starting it wasn't really clear why they wanted it to be subject of the task and finish group. And so clarity on that point is needed. And secondly, under methodology and time frame, I suggest, and I think it goes without saying, that it helps to work to some sort of work programme, and also helps to report back to the scrutiny committee. I think that should be one of the suggestions, expectational chair of the group, would help to have progress reports to scrutiny, because that would help work along, and we could pick up on if there were any difficulties along the way.
And presumably, actually, that progress report from the chair of the select committee actually ends up being a two-way process, because the committee as a whole then ends up feeding back to the chair. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. And finally, it'd be helpful to clarify production of a written report, because it's not very clear from here, and sometimes it's not very clear the task and finish group who actually should write the report, whether it should be officers or whether it should be chair doing the bulk of the work, or whether members of the working group will chip in, but the chair has the overall responsibility for producing the written report.
Yeah, that's all good stuff. Thank you very much for that. Councillor Stootley.
Yes, thank you, Chair. As one of the most recent chairs of the Select Committee, I have got a few comments on this, and I think perhaps that last comment to clarify the report and how the report will be set out is a good suggestion. Noting from this, we did actually have a meeting where we discussed some of this. Unfortunately, I was new to the Scrutiny Committee at the time, and I wasn't entirely sure what we were doing, so we didn't formalise these, so it's good to have a basis in place so that we can do that in the future. But I would also suggest that any suggestions to the select committees are very carefully thought through, because the one that we hope draws to conclusion next month has suffered long delays because of resourcing issues and other problems as well. And it would be good for officers, I think, to know exactly what is expected of them from the committee, so that they can identify the officers that need to do the work and allocate time for that specific officers at the time. Because when we have the task and finish group, I think it would be right. I don't think it would be clear what we were going to be asking for, and to what extent that was going to take up lots of time. Hence why we had some long delays while we allocated that work. So more clarity on what's required, I think, would be necessary.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's an interesting point about the different types of way of doing scrutiny. Obviously, here we have tended to have either meetings or select committee / task and finish. If you go to this annual scrutiny conference and hear back from other councils, there are different ways of doing things. Some of which are less onerous actually when it comes to officers in terms of time, and perhaps even more member-led. So I mean, it may be worthwhile during the course of this year putting some more work into adapting the way that we do scrutiny to that can take on board some of those comments, I think. Councillor Osborne.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, can you use your microphone, please?
Just on page 16, so appendix A, where it says, is it expected to advise anyone or approve of cabinets? Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's meant to advise cabinets, isn't it? So by default.
So I didn't quite hear what you said there.
So it says on the terms of reference, appendix A, page 16, purpose of the working group, the last point, and the purpose of the working group is we need to make clear the authority of the working group, and then it is not empowered to make decisions. Is it expected to advise anyone or a group? Presumably, the purpose is to advise cabinet or make recommendations to cabinet.
Although a select committee ends up coming back via the main body of the scrutiny committee, which in turn then makes the recommendation.
So okay.
If that's
Yeah, absolutely that would be the right course, because it wouldn't make decisions. Scrutiny makes a decision to make the recommendation to Cabinet, but there might also be things it's producing that it wants to be advising third parties, which scrutiny committees are entitled to do. So it might want to make recommendations to the county council, for example, So there's those other bodies to consider.
I mean, that's a sort of case in point, actually, thinking about the bins work that's being undertaken at the moment. The chair of that select committee, Councillor Stootley, has gone through the process of working with comms to get the consultation out, for example. So, and that happens without necessarily coming back to us, but that's a core part of making sure that particular piece of work is undertaken. So I think, Councillor Stootley, I'm asking you indicate as well that you wanted to say something.
No, I was only going to say that the task and finish group that's just going to be concluded, when it comes back in July, it will come with recommendations that the Scrutiny Committee hopefully will recommend for Cabinet. So our final selection and recommendations together on that day.
Councillor Huntley.
Thank you, Chair. I thought Councillor Carlo made a very useful, important point about who's writing the overall written report here. But clarification or clarity for new members, what's been the practice thus far with that? Who's responsible for overall written reports?
Councillor Stootley.
Again, I can only speak for the one that I've chaired so far, and that is that officers have written the report. There were stages where I think maybe I could have contributed and probably helped to speed up the process a bit. So, from my point of view, it wouldn't be. I wouldn't advise against members being part of the writing process, but I think it might actually be an officer role.
It's finding that balance, isn't it, between the strategic role that we have and not wishing to sort of cross the line into something that's operational about the way that the council work. I've seen various hands going up, so Councillor Galvin, then Councillor Sands, please.
Thanks. I was part of two task and finish groups, and both did quite big reports, and I chaired one and was on the other one, and I think I more or less drafted both reports with the group, but then it was edited and improved by officers. So it was a joint action, and that worked quite well because we'd heard all the evidence. It was a member-led group essentially. It was a member-led group. We'd had the evidence we put together, and then officers helped us formulate that. So it was a joint effort, and I think not wanting to add burdens to anyone. If you know what you're going into in the group, if you take on the group because you want to do it and you are interested in it, then you'll be willing to put that time in to do that.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Sands.
I was just going to add that some years ago, Councillor Galvin and I and Councillor Story, who's the non councillor, were on a task and finish group on community centres, and the report there was finally pulled together by Bob Cronk, who is also no longer in the City Hall, and then he did the bulk of the work in pulling the report together, gave it to us for approval, and then once that was finalised, we made a presentation in the council chambers to interested parties from all the community centres. So it's, I think there's a moving feast on this, but essentially I think the officers are the people who have the time to pull together the findings, so to speak. In that we also might have had a role in chair from memory as we had our meetings as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on this one? Thank you. We've had a number of... Oh, Councillor Carlo.
Yeah, just to say that on the Airbnb, which is saying, was compromised by COVID, I wrote quite a long report, and it wasn't very clear who would write the report, and that's why I've raised this here, and we need to clarify that situation.
I mean, it'd be interesting to maybe try and get an understanding of, without going into specific groups now, whether that almost unique circumstances we were faced with during the COVID pandemic actually ended up changing the way we would normally, what the normal sort of standard operating procedures would be when it comes to task and finish. And we've had some useful sort of suggestions here for this. I'm just trying to work out what the best way of incorporating them is.
as you've been talking, I've just been jotting down some potential amendments that I can perhaps suggest. In the section that's about the role of the chair, so the very last bit, I'm sorry to jump to the end, just tweaking the bit point E, which says presenting reports to the group to the appointed committee, saying presenting reports to the group including progress reports, which I think picks up the point Councillor Carlo made earlier, or one of the points, sorry. And then in the methodology section, adding potentially a couple of bits. So adding something that says, and expectations with regard to written reports, including how it should be produced. So it's not necessarily saying in these, the officers must produce it, it's saying in the terms of reference, we'd expect you to clarify how you're going to do that. And then also adding in the methodology section, what information will be required to provide an evidence base for the group and how this will be sourced. So trying to clarify up front what type of sources of evidence and information you might want and who's going to be producing that information. I think I will just say I'm also quite used to at the first meeting of task and finish groups doing some of that as well. So actually sitting down with the group and saying, well, what will you want as a collective group to be able to give you the answers you need to test out the areas you need to test, and let's go away and work that. So you can get some of that into terms of reference, but then it's really important to work with the group to understand what they'll need, so that you can take it forward, because of the best will in the world, sometimes until you start to go through a process, you won't know where that will take you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is everyone happy with what Leah's just outlined there?
Yeah.
Thanks, Anthony.
Yes, absolutely. That sounds very sensible as a solution. I think it's important, Councillor Sands mentioned there's probably a movable fee for some of these, having a little bit of latitude, yes, for dependent on what the topic is, who indeed might have expertise on it. It seems to be very good idea.
It's about having a set of terms of reference that are enablers rather than being prescriptive, I think. So, yeah. Okay, great. Well, thanks very much for that. Let's now move on to item 9, which is the work programme 2022-23. And what we have here, page 19 onwards, is a distillation of our of the outputs from our informal meeting we had a couple of weeks ago, where we looked at the various items that were potentially up for discussion this year. And what you will see on page 24 for Appendix A is how they fit in to a timeline throughout the rest of the civic year. So just interested whether anyone has any particular comments on that at this stage. Councillor Galvin.
So, domestic violence seems to be left off, and that is, I just wanted the rationale for that. I think it could potentially be added back into the programme. The big Oregon certainly very keen to do that, and it could be possible to move to make the communal bins and fly tipping item on 14th of July a bit quicker. It shouldn't be huge at that stage, and move debt of price to there from September and put domestic violence in September.
I mean, the only thing I will just say, and caveat any suggestions that are coming, is the ability of officers to write the necessary reports to have them available for us to scrutinise on a given date. But can I seek comments on this suggestion there?
Thank you, Chair. So, Councillor Galvin, I think we can incorporate domestic violence into the antisocial behaviour and community safety item, if that's acceptable. And on the second point, we have spoken to the teams who will be involved in producing around this, and I think the work we're doing kind of through the summer may be very helpful to that debt advice, support and debt recovery item being in September.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Osborne, then Councillor Huntley. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I would be both of the mix, domestic violence and ASB. So I think they're both very big. Obviously, there's a lot of overlap, but ASB on its own is a big thing, and domestic violence is also a big. Yeah, I think we wouldn't get effective scrutiny to trying to do both of them at the same time rather than focusing. The ASB community safety is there's a very different role for council in that, and domestic violence may be more in terms of looking at what partners doing. I think that it may be difficult to do it effectively because we both at the same time.
Thank you for that. Councillor Huntley.
Thank you, Chair. I kind of find myself agreeing because I do think there's a very big topic here. My suggestion was, rather than in October looking at ASB, we really focus this on county lines. There's a serious and sustained criminality that's involved in this, and it does have a profound effect on residents of the city. So rather than it be something that's included parenthetically, I'd like to suggest that in October we focus our scrutiny on the issue of county lines, the effect it has on the city, what we're able to do, what we might be recommending with other parties.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillors Osborne and Galvin and Stootley. So, Councillor Osborne.
I do agree that county lines need to be looked at, but I think that, as I understand it, there is going to be a community safety strategy. There's a really valuable opportunity for scrutiny to pre-scrutinise that before it comes to Cabinet, and that we will be able to have a direct impact on that, whereas county lines, we won't be able to have as much of an influence over that. And ASB is also in council estates is a big thing for residents and as well.
Councillor Galvin, do I see you indicate?
Yeah, to underline that, really, I think ASB, it sounds a bit general there, but it isn't. It's a real, and it is being assessed. I think quite a lot of change is going on and would be really useful to, so not taking anything away from the dangerous sort of practices around county lines and the growth of that. But I wouldn't want to drop ASB this, given the place it has at the moment in the council's work programme.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stootley.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think Councillor Huntley makes a really good point about county lines. We both represent wards where county lines is a serious issue. It affects people. I mean, clearly, antisocial behaviour is a problem across the city that affects people significantly. But county lines is a much more serious issue. It's happening now, and it's increasing now. I think it's something we look at in that detail, and placing October is a good place for it to be.
I mean, it's an interesting point about where, are we scrutinising things where we have some form of ability to change outcomes, and I mean there is clearly no dissent in the view that county lines is having an absolutely awful impact on areas of the city. But is that a function that we as the scrutiny committee can necessarily do some real good in? But I'll bring in Louise, I think, at this point to see whether you can pick up any comments. And then I think almost every other member indicates, so I'll have to get hands up again.
Yeah, I'd just like to remind members that we are developing a new community safety strategy that will incorporate ASB. It would be really helpful to my team if scrutiny could have do some pre-scrutiny work on that, so that we can incorporate your views.
Councillor Huntley.
Thank you, Chair. I completely understand that ASB is an important issue and it does have a material effect on people's lives. County lines does involve people being stabbed with different deaths in the city here. I do think it's something that we can discuss and make recommendations and suggestions on. I'd perhaps suggest, given the precedent of what's happened before with this committee, that we invite the Police and Crime Commissioner to scrutiny, so we'll be able to actually ask from a policing perspective what's being done, and again where we can end up with that.
Thank you. And one of the things I was going to suggest is, having picked up what happens at other councils, there is an option potentially to have a sort of special rapporteur drawn from this committee to go out and do a piece of work on county lines. So it's not a task and finish group, it's not the committee using an item on a work programme, it's not specifically taking up a huge amount of officer resource, but it does come with the sort of the full weight of the committee to go and try and get to the bottom of issues that are blighting those communities. So I wonder whether that might be a way of achieving both things on that. So lots of people have indicated. I know I'd seen Councillor Osborne, Councillor Sands. So let's bring in Councillor Sands first. So I think he was there first.
Thank you, Chair. I think county lines is something which we do need to look at as a matter of priority. I mean, I've had direct experience with county lines. We had a county lines operation just one street over from where we live, and it caused huge amount of consternation in the neighbourhood. One of the things, of course, about county lines is often involves cookering and taking over someone's accommodation, which invariably is either private rental, social housing, through a housing association, or even council properties, because they tend to pick on people who are in the vulnerable group. People who are in their own homes don't tend to be in that vulnerable group and susceptible to cookering. But we've got an awful lot of very vulnerable tenants. I could show you dozens and dozens of addresses in my ward alone where people would be in danger of that. So I think that county lines should be something which we see as a priority, and I think it's something which we should bring forward to October. I think that's a suggested date, and as I said, the recommendation has been to have a Police and Crime Commissioner brought forward. Also, by that time, although I'm not on the scrutiny, I may have some additional stuff from counter-terrorism local profile, which may relate to this as well. So,
can I make a proposal, which is that what we have come back for the July meeting is a detailed scope of what that work would actually look like, because I would be interested just to see how, what a specific piece of scrutiny when properly scoped up on county lines actually looks like, because I think we all want, I think, to talk about county lines, but I come back to that. I'm not necessarily sure what we as a local authority can do to specifically impact that. Anyway, I've got Councillors Osborne, Vaughan Thomas and Carlo and Galvin.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was going to suggest the same thing, and also, I guess, reiterate what we said, that there are things that are coming forward that we can actually add value to. And just picking up on what people said, yes, county lines does mean that people get stabbed, does mean it, but there are also people, having their windows smashed in. There are people who living in sheltered housing with a drug dealer upstairs who's terrorising the neighbours with a dog. There's people who are too scared to go leave their house because they are scared of their neighbours upstairs. I cannot accept that we are saying that this is not an issue and that we should be looking at county lines instead. ASB is a massive issue for tenants, and certainly from nowhere elsewhere. So I do think that there is definitely stuff that the council can do and has a direct impact on. We've been seeing how make sure there's been changes in the ASB team. It will be really good to have a chance to look and see how that's actually working out and what improvements can be made. So I do think we need to look at this.
Thank you. Councillor Vaughan Thomas.
Yeah,
as a Mark Cross councillor, county lines. I mean, ASB, really important. As a councillor and as an advice worker for 20 years, people with neighbours from hell, it's huge, and it's always been there. But we're talking about criminality, death, and it's not just about the people who are getting murdered and getting stabbed. It's the terror that sort of ripples throughout the entire community. In terms of priorities, I'm not saying not to ASB, but in terms of people getting murdered and stabbed, we're talking priorities. It's not we're talking about not doing it, but it's about county lines. I do think, as a priority, it should be county lines.
I'm just going to bring in Louise now, please.
I think maybe we can reassure members that the community safety strategy and the ASB work that will be attached to it will be a kind of comprehensive and holistic look at all of those issues we're talking about here. So, you know, the kind of county lines element of the work that we do, and we do that in partnership, of course, but the police primarily are the lead for county lines, will be included in part of that work that we can present to you in the autumn. So I don't know if that reassures.
Okay, I've got Councillor Carlo next, then Councillor Galvin.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, we did scrutinise county lines probably about 3 or 4 years ago, and we had a senior police officer have a little bit of a presentation, and we made some recommendations, and it would be useful to have an update on the situation since then and to review on the recommendations, the outcomes of those. But just to support Councillor Osborne here, because the ASB is very, very wide-ranging. 20 lines are part of it, and drugs, alcohol are part of it. But there are quite a few people living in the community who feel very frightened because there was an individual living above them in their block. They're often older ladies living on their own or young families, and they do feel intimidated by the ASB going on, and it's really quite difficult as councillors to try to address this. And we need to address the low-level ASB in the round, but obviously it does bring in drugs, alcohol, and those sorts of things, and county line as well, obviously.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Galvin.
Thanks. Yeah, I think I wouldn't want to get too hung up on an either-or situation here, because the two are intimately linked in my experience. So I don't know if other councillors have been to the briefings by the police on county lines, because there have been some really exceptionally useful briefings, and I like the idea of having a rapporteur, because you might be able to work quite closely with the police on operational details that wouldn't be possible probably for them to share to scrutiny. So really get a bit further with it on a deeper level, and keep it within the topic of community safety, so we don't lose the chance to scrutinise the whole area of the council's work that is important that we look at, but also keep that link going with the police. I mean, to me, in my experience as a councillor, the two are very linked, they're not separate things. So
And you make a very valid point there about what information can be discussed with the constabulary outside of a meeting. I know that I've had conversations with the constabulary about county lines related issues that I won't talk about now, because this is a public meeting that's being streamed, and actually I think there is the potential to actually get more of an understanding by going down that slightly different route. But Leah, I think you want to come in.
One other point it's worth making on this is we're not the only scrutiny committee that look at issues around community safety type matters and criminal matters. So we have an appointee to the Norfolk Community Safety Partnership that's precisely there as a group of different organisations scrutinising how the police and others are delivering against community safety issues. And I think that your last report from them looked at how that group was scrutinising how domestic abuse and sexual violence was delivered. I expect they'll be looking at another of the priorities in the community safety plan, which is I don't want to say county lines because it's part of a bigger thing. It's county lines, cookering, child exploitation is wrapped up as one of their priorities. So the Community Safety Partnership will be scrutinising that in due course as well. So just because we might not look in depth at the topic, it doesn't mean that it's being ignored. There are bodies that are looking at this that we're contributing to.
Thank you. Any other comments at this stage, please? Councillor Huntley.
Thank you, Chair. I fully acknowledge what people are saying around the room here, that ASB is important. The suggestion of focusing in our meeting in October on county lines is that a lot of what happens from county lines or through county lines, as has been indicated, flows down into ASB. So it seems to me a sensible opportunity to focus our scrutiny on that topic. There are concomitant issues that come from that. If we're able to get the Police and Crime Commissioner here, as I understand that's been the precedent before, that's a very good opportunity for us to do what this committee is here to do and properly scrutinise. So I would reiterate that rather than have county lines seen parenthetically in the October meeting, we look at county lines primarily.
I mean, the other thing I would say is I would be tempted to see if we can get Paul Sanford as Chief Constable here rather than the Police and Crime Commissioner, simply because I think that will give we'll get a better set of understanding as to some of the issues. But Councillor Osborne. So I'm saying this because I don't have any other words to put in it at the moment. For the 13th of October item, I'm in essence having a proposal to delete from anti through to including. So there is a scrutiny which simply reads county lines. Yeah.
Can I make a separate proposal that we just remove the brackets, because I think it's really important that we scrutinise the council's work on antisocial behaviour. So we definitely include county lines, take away the brackets if you like, put county lines first, but keep the ASB there because it's a key piece of council work officers would like us to scrutinise. We don't want to miss the chance to help officers in their work and to improve the situation for many people in Norwich that are living in quite difficult situations. And county lines and ASB are intimately linked. So my proposal would be remove the brackets. I take the point that it should be in parentheses.
So is the compromise then? I mean, from a resourcing point of view and doing both. So we invite Paul Sanford. We talk about county lines for an hour, and then we look at doing the scrutiny of your of the sort of antisocial behaviour and the work that you're doing with that. Does that work for maybe a slightly longer meeting? But I mean, does that?
Yes. If my team are presenting as was planned here on the work programme, and we're going to ask the police if they'll do the other bit, that will work.
I'm just trying to work out whether that's the compromise that we get the county lines on. It gets the sort of level of sort of publicity that it rightly requires and level of scrutiny. But I've got Councillor Powder and then Councillor Osborne, please.
So bear with me. So I think I'd like to echo Councillor Humphrey's views. I feel perhaps there is overlap between county lines and ASD, but the bigger issue is county lines, and that probably links up to ASD and other issues. I think it would be helpful for me as a newbie to understand how the council are defining each of those, and if there are any reports or recommendations, then let me understand the situation a lot more. But essentially, I do agree with Councillor.
Thank you. Councillor Osborne.
What I don't want to happen is we have a discussion about county lines, we have a nice chat, we talk about it, we discuss it, it's an important issue, and nothing happens as a result. We had Police and Crime Commissioner come just before the pandemic. I don't know if anything came after that. We asked some questions, it was interesting. What actually changed, or what the council changed as a result? How did the citizens benefit from that? So we've heard that there is a community safety strategy coming forward that officers have worked on or will be working on. It will save officers time. It will mean that officers have more time to actually deliver that and improve the lives of Norwich residents if we focus on the community safety strategy that is coming forward, improve that, actually improve the lives of Norwich residents. And I don't want just to be talking about county lines. We will literally have something to do that we can actually do about it. And as Leah says, the appropriate route for that is really through the NCC, SP, whatever it is, that Councillor Stupey now sits on, or Councillor Stupey, sorry. And I do think that if we're going to do justice to the kind of social behaviour, the focus has to be on that. I have a lot of case studies that committee meeting, a lot of questions. And looking back at the last 3 years I've been on the council, antisocial behaviour has consistently underperformed according to the council's own metrics. The KPIs we get every year, every quarter. In fact, ASB is always underperforming, apart from one quarter I think it was on target. So clearly there's an issue there. And I don't want to distract from that. If we bring the PCC in, the focus will be on bashing Tory, which is fine, won't change anything. We actually want to propose that scrutiny is to improve the council's function and improve what we do, and that's what we should be focused on.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Padder, Councillor Burchett Colton, and Councillor Huntley.
Just a quick one. So in the last few weeks since being councillor, I've had very little problems with I live in Latham, and they have been instances of antisocial behaviour and they've been dealt with immediately in this. I've been to a local SNAP meeting again. The officers there have dealt with those issues pretty much immediately. On the wider ASB remit, perhaps this is a kind of an evaluation thing that can be looked at in terms of the council, rather than something bigger and probably, well, in my view, something like county lines, which I think really is an important issue. And, some of us are new and we have new views, we have fresh ideas, views that I think lend something.
Okay, thank you. I forgot who indicated next. Councillor Burchett Colton.
Yeah, I think there's been quite a good discussion on this, and I do believe that we should do what you proposed, James, and obviously Councillor Wright, to do the county lines and have Paul Sanford come for about an hour and then go back to Lou's antisocial behaviour paper and do it in that way. I think that'll really work. We've had county line problems big time in Sewell just recently. We do have a lot around social behaviour, but the county lines are that goes through county lines, and then like Councillor Thomas was saying, that just flips through all of them through the ward. So that's what I would suggest.
Thank you. I mean, it's probably worthwhile saying that given diaries of some of these external people, we may end up having to book in a sort of external non-meeting briefing thing for them, but we'll work on that. I've just been told that the PCC had asked to come to our scrutiny meeting as he was doing a tour of all the county scrutiny committees, but we weren't able to previously accommodate him, so I guess there may be an option for... Councillor Osborne refers to it as Tory bashing. I probably put it as asking challenging questions of the Police and Crime Commissioner.
Yeah, that was a change.
All of that notwithstanding, we still will need a detailed scope for that piece of scrutiny, because though it will say county lines, we need to know exactly what we want to achieve there. Councillor Hunter, I think you're next.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think the importance here is focusing our scrutiny on county lines and what we might be able to do about that. I absolutely do agree that we don't necessarily want to be just Tory bashing here. That's down to us as the civil authority. If we are
Oh, I missed that.
I just wait for the mic to go. If we are incisively and in a detailed way scrutinising a representative who has influence on what the police can practically do around this, I think that's the job of this committee. So I really like to say and reiterate my point. I think it would be remiss of this committee not to be focusing on county lines, and that will be my proposal for what we're looking at in October.
Okay, so I've had the word proposal there. So I think we end up having a bit more of a circular discussion if we continue this. So let me just, the proposal there is that in 13th of October we just look at county lines. So with that proposal, is there a seconder for that? Councillor Stutley seconded that. So all those in favour of in the October meeting just looking at county lines, please indicate. All those against? Any abstentions?
You're a bit quick on hands up in favour.
Sorry.
I looked up and I'm like...
If it's any consolation, it went along party lines, so
okay,
as opposed to county lines.
Yeah, surprise.
So we have the October meeting. We'll just be looking at county lines. It would be useful though for someone to write a detailed specification for what the scope of that work's going to be. Councillor Stutley.
I didn't spot your vote.
I voted. I did indicate I voted against. So. I think we should be looking at the antisocial behaviour.
On the spec, obviously you've chosen not to take a more detailed look at county lines behind the scenes, which I think is a shame. So in the spec, perhaps build in some below the line if you can, or some private talk, so that you can actually get under the skin of county lines, because what they can say in a public scrutiny is not going to really touch what we're looking at here. So, I mean, I know you're so keen to look at it and not look at ASB, but you really want to make sure that you actually have a proper scrutiny of it, and that will only happen if you speak to police in private, or part of it will happen. It's a very serious and complex issue, and some very, very good policing going on. So, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Stutley.
Yes, I agree actually. I think part of that process can involve a below the line element. And the police, I don't agree actually that we can't make a difference with county lines. And also I think the police, members of the police, especially those on the ground, they would like to hear from us about our experiences and tell us how we can help them as well. So this will be a good piece of work.
Thank you. Any other? We sort of dealt with the 13th of October at some length. Any other comments on the rest of the work programme? Of course, with the usual caveat that it comes back to every meeting anyway. But Councillor Stutley. I would like to close down the motorcycle.
The welcoming refugees into Norwich. I would like to suggest that you place that in September. 6 months, approximately 6 months after the war in Ukraine started and the influx of refugees in there. And of course, the refugees are a big piece of work to have a look at that on that date.
In addition to debt advice and support, or in place of?
Debt and advice support may have another slot.
Because I think there have been some discussion about possibly looking at the refugee item as a task and finish group. Is that something you don't favour?
No, I don't favour task and finish groups at the moment.
Jaundice reasons.
Yeah. But I think we do need to have a look at that. I think it's a very hot topic and something that we
Okay, thank you. Councillor Galvin.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. Revenue is really important. I'd like to propose it is a task administrator. What came up in the workshop in my thought was that it would be really good to have it as a small focused task and finish group that actually could foreground the voices and lived experience of refugees, so we could go and actually speak to and invite in and perhaps visit some of the groups doing the work, have a look at the council's resettlement work, and actually allow, rather than this very formal, quite constrained meeting that we have a group where we can actually allow people to share their experience. So I thought it would work quite well. And then I really do think that we should keep debt advice and support and debt recovery early in the year, because we are facing a real debt meltdown, and it can't be overstated. The problems we're going to be facing come autumn when people's bills go up again, and they've already doubled. So I think it's really important. The council does collect monies, it does manage debt, it can help, and it's something we could usefully look at. I don't want to see it slip out of the programme.
I think when you're the debt thing is so important, particularly when you listen to the news and you've got the rate at which the fuel at the petrol pumps is going up at significant inflation levels day on day. That will have an impact on people just going about their sort of daily lives. So, any other comments at this stage, Councillor Huntley?
Thank you, Chair. I think you need to speak to you.
Sorry, I didn't see you.
No, it's fine. I mean, I will always defer to the fact that members do tend to have first say in such committees, quite rightly. But I think, building on what Lucy was saying earlier, one of the reasons why we were partly looking at a March date for this, with whatever form we do this in, looking at the refugee topic, it's going to be one that we really don't have the resources or the expertise to look at alone. We need some of the partners that support this work to be engaging to look at what data and information they have as well. And so putting it as a March date was partly to give us time, whether we do it through a task and finish group, whether we do it as a one-off meeting, to give that time to find out what others have, give them a bit of time to understand what experiences, particularly those that come from the Ukrainian communities, albeit got experience from Syria and Afghanistan that we've already been able to build on. But just give that bit of scope and time before we brought it back, whereas September probably doesn't quite give us that scope.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Huntley.
Thank you. I just wanted to check, Councillor Garvin, had you suggested that we look at the issue of domestic violence?
Yeah, that's what I suggested, was that we move around. Oh, sorry.
And that did seem to me a good suggestion.
But we have to move debt advice and debt recovery to July, because communal bins and fighting might not take that long at that point. So domestic violence in September, we move debt advice and support and debt recovery to July. But we originally it was thought of it would be good in September because it would be pre-October price hike.
Yeah.
So it needs to be before it anyway.
I'm going to bring in Lou, probably having just said the caveat of getting reports ready for the July meeting, but.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I don't think we can do it justice in July. That's the issue. And we are doing some work throughout the summer around cost of living, and looking quite closely at our services and the work we're doing, and we're engaging quite widely on that. And it may be worth, waiting until September so we can use that to inform what we bring to you around that.
Yeah, thank you. Any other comments at this stage, please? So where did we get to on? Obviously, we had the discussion around looking at the sort of refugee piece in September, and then obviously the reasons why that might not be possible. Councillor Stutely.
Yeah, I accept that maybe we don't have the resources to deal with that by September. I would advise, rather than agreeing to have a task and finish group, that we have a look at the scope of what that would require, I guess, of all topics on this list, perhaps the refugees one I would possibly accept as a possibility for task and finish. But let's scope it out in detail before we decide.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to be in a situation where, especially with a subject that might even be wider reaching like the task and finish group, we don't want to be in a situation where it's delayed and we're not talking about it until the following year. If we say March, it needs to be March.
No, I think scoping out in detail to see if it's possible for a task and finish, I think for a very important issue is a really sensible piece, really sensible suggestion. Councillor Bojek, Colton, then Councillor Galvin, please.
Yeah, I think Councillor Galvin was also saying about a workshop. If that was a workshop, would everybody be involved and be allowed to talk to the refugees or anybody who came in, rather than having a task and finish where only a few people would have their side, and everyone would be able to see. It's a big subject. The people that come in, you can see what their lives have been like, how we have helped them, what help they need.
I mean, the whole thing is that we have, and coming back to Councillor Stupin's point, that with something that's appropriately spec'd out, we to a certain extent have licence to do whatever we think is best to deliver a particular piece of scrutiny, and that may be a bit of standard task and finish with just a few members. That might be a wider meeting for part of it where we can all talk to people and get their lived experience of a particular situation and then feed that back in. All of that is possible. So yeah, you can do anything really.
Okay.
Yeah. Councillor Galvin.
Yeah, just to ask really the question from officers, what would be a good score, and you yourself as well, Chair, what would be a good scoping process? And I was thinking perhaps we could all send in what we'd like to know, or I don't know, I'm trying to think of a good way to scope it by email that would be effective and now rather than, as Ian says, in March. It's going to be too late, so we need to start scoping. We can scope from both ends, officers and us, meeting somewhere in the middle, but it's just a process of how we do that. So just some steers on what the scoping process would be helpful.
Excellent question. How would you like the scoping to work?
I think it's always helpful to get views from members on what they'd like to see from reviews. Some of it was covered during the topic forum, and I appreciate all members might have perceptions on that, so absolutely we could see views from members perhaps using the topic that was circulated previously as the starting basis. I think the other thing is to potentially, there was a couple of named partners that I know have got recorded somewhere that have been really critical in supporting refugee resettlement, and it might be helpful to approach those and say, we're thinking of looking at this topic, where might you suggest we do focus, who might be involved, who might be really useful to be involved in that process too?
Yeah, so talk to the experts.
Yeah,
absolutely. Very good suggestion there. Any other comments at this stage, please? Councillor Sands.
I was only going to say that earlier, rather than later, look at the refugees that had time to sort of settle into the city, apart from the fact they're going to be concerned about what's happening at home, we can also ask them about their ongoing needs and requirements and desires here as well, and how we can additionally support them. If we leave it too long, the chance to sort of really question and deal with that is going to be missed.
Thank you. Well, shall we set ourselves then a deadline of the 15th of September meeting to have a fully scoped out piece of work on refugees, with a view to pressing the button at that meeting one way or another on a task and finish or something else, depending on what's considered to be best. Because I think probably it'd be a bit rushed if we tried to do it by the 14th of July and we wouldn't necessarily be able to speak to the partners, etc. But just giving that bit of cover of the summer break would give a bit of extra time for that. And so we'll continue with debt as the sort of substantive item for the 15th of September. Yep. General nods. Any other comments on the work programme at this stage? Remembering you can comment on it again on the 14th of July and the 15th of September. Right, well, if there's no other comments on the work programme, that's the last item on the agenda today. So thank you very much. Meeting is now closed, and we've got training on the 30th of June on Zoom.